Hello, this is a follow-up video to my Tinysizer overview and demo video. In this video I'd like to talk to you a little more about the auxiliary ports and connecting other gear to the Tinysizer, because I just glossed over that a little briefly in my demo video. So to recap, there are 5 auxiliary ports on the right side of the Tinysizer. They are 1/4-inch TRS sockets, which take your regular stereo 1/4-inch jacks. The sockets are internally connected to the auxiliary patch field, which you can find here. In this auxiliary patch field, you have 2 connectors for each auxiliary port. One for the tip and one for the ring connector. So each port can have 2 signals going into or out of the Tinysizer. So for example, if you have a CV and gate keyboard, which you want to use to play melodies on the Tinysizer, you would connect a stereo splitter cable with a TRS jack on one side and 2 TS mono jacks on the other side. You would plug the TRS jack into auxiliary port 1, and then you would plug one jack into the gate signal output of the keyboard and the other jack into the CV output of the keyboard. So let's say the gate signal from the keyboard is on the tip connection of the TRS plug. So we connect the tip connector in the patch field to our gate input of one of our envelopes. And the CV signal is on the ring connection of the TRS jack, so we use the ring patch port and patch that into the 1 volt per octave input of our Tinysizer VCO. So like this, the CV signal from the keyboard will go through our cable into auxiliary port 1, and on the ring connector it will be forwarded to the ring patch point, which we then connect to our volt per octave input. The gate signal from the keyboard comes through the cable on the tip connector, so the tip port will be connected to the gate input of one of our envelope generators. Of course, you don't have to use auxiliary ports as inputs. You can also use them as outputs, or you can have the tip be an input and the ring be an output. It's completely flexible, and it's just basically a converter from 1/4-inch jacks to the little patch leads of the Tinysizer. So for example, you could use the Tinysizer's built-in MIDI to CV interface to control another synthesizer which accepts CV signals. So from the MIDI to CV interface's gate output, you could patch a patch lead into the tip patch port. So the gate signal from the MIDI CV interface will go out of the Tinysizer into your other synthesizer. And then you can patch the CV output of the MIDI to CV interface into the ring connection of your auxiliary 1 port and send the CV signal out to control the pitch of another synthesizer. Since there are 5 TRS auxiliary ports, you have up to 10 input or output ports to interface the Tinysizer with other analog gear. Of course, you don't just have to patch CV signals in or out of the Tinysizer. You can also route the sawtooth wave output, for example, into the tip of auxiliary port 3. And then use another cable, which you plug into auxiliary port 3, and then plug that into a mixer or into an external effect, and then you could actually send the wet signal back through the ring connection and patch the ring connector into the filter, for example. So it's basically like an effects insert path for external effect pedals or other effects. I often like to connect the Tinysizer to my Eurorack modular synth, which doesn't use 1/4-inch jacks, but 1/8-inch jacks, which are the small TS plugs. And because I don't want to use adapters like this, I built a small breakout box for the Tinysizer, which features 10 1/8-inch sockets, which are converted to a floppy cable with a header similar to the Tinysizer's patch points. Okay, I hope this video showed how easy it is to connect the Tinysizer to other instruments. As always, thanks a lot for watching, and if you have questions, post them below this video in the comments. And yeah, have fun making music, and see you soon. Bye!